card, so you got all my contact information. Nice to meet you, Jason. Best of luck. Likewise. It looks that way. I'll be plus one.
Humid enough. It might come unruly a little bit.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Hawthorne, President of the League of Women Voters of the Wayzata Plymouth area. I'd like to welcome our candidates, our audience, and our viewers to this evening's forum on behalf of the League of Women Voters, Wayzata Plymouth area. The League of Women Voters is a 103-year-old volunteer, nonpartisan organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in this forum tonight are those of the candidates, not the League of Women Voters. It is our purpose in sponsoring such forums is to provide you with the opportunity to hear the candidates discuss face-to-face the issues that are important to you. This is a nonpartisan forum. We ask that campaign buttons or campaign t-shirts not be worn, nor signs or literature distributed in this room. Please silence your electronic devices at this time. And now I'd like to introduce you to our forum moderator, Patty Robles from Maple Grove, who is a member of the League of Women Voters, Wayzata Plymouth area.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good evening. Tonight's forum is provided to give you the opportunity to learn about the candidates running for Corcoran Mayor and City Council special election. There is never enough time to cover all the issues in a setting such as this. If your questions were not addressed, feel free to contact the candidate directly. Recordings of this event, whether in person or by computer, may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio-video of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by the media reporting on the event. The rules for this evening's forum are as follows. Candidates will be allowed an opening statement with a maximum of 1 minute to state their experience, platform, and objectives. A question and answer period will follow the opening statements. The answers will be confined to 1 minute unless designated by the moderator. Opening statements will be given in alphabetical and questions will be answered in a rotating order. A 15-second warning will be given to the candidates. The candidates will also be giving a 2-minute closing statement. Candidates, please finish your sentence quickly when you see the stop sign, or you will be interrupted. No reference of a personal nature will be tolerated. A person's public record may be examined, but not their character. This forum is made available to encourage the voting public to focus on the issues and not on personalities. We ask that there be no demonstrations in support or opposition to the candidates or their positions, and that candidates be allowed their full time to get their points across. The public has been encouraged to submit questions online in advance. For those in the audience, if you have a question, write it on a 3x5 card available from our volunteers and raise your hand to have it picked up. Questions that are unclear, hostile, or of a personal nature will not be used. Those that fall in the same general area may be consolidated. The City of Corcoran has 3 races on the ballot: Mayor, City Council, and City Council special election. There is no League of Women Voters forum scheduled for the City of Corcoran Mayor's race because the candidate, Tom McGee, is running unopposed. Also, there is no League of Women Voters forum scheduled for the City Council special election because the candidate, Dean Varenkamp, I hope I got that right, Dean, I did practice it, is running unopposed. The candidates running for 2 seats on the City Council are Craig Espelin, Jeremy Nichols, Alan Schultz, and Jason Woody. Please keep in mind you'll be voting for 2 of these candidates for 2 seats on the Corcoran City Council. We will begin with introductory remarks, starting with Craig Espelin.
And it is on. My name is Craig Espelin. I've lived in Corcoran for 18 months. I live in the Bellwether community, just to our east, I guess. My experience is I'm a native Minnesotan. We lived in Chicago, San Diego, St. Louis, and here we lived in Vadnais Heights, Savage, Minneapolis, and St. Paul. I'm married and have 1 dog. Big company experience, both Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies, as well as a lot of startups. So I have a fairly broad business experience with business units ranging up to $2 billion in responsibility. I've always had a startup mentality where I guide and counsel startups and small businesses today and help them focus on how they build a marketplace. In service, I've been a small city park and rec commissioner, a large suburb chamber of commerce member. I've been on multiple boards for not-for-profits, including the University of Minnesota, and I run a not-for-profit for solopreneurs and small business. My goals and objectives.
Thank you. Now, Jeremy Nichols.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Nichols. I would like to thank the League for having us here today, and thank you, Patty, for moderating. I have been on the Corcoran City Council since 2020. I started training for that position at the age of 11 because my dad was on the town board in Baytown Township when I was a kid, and he used to make me attend meetings. On professional background, I have 15 years experience in construction. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in material science and engineering from the University of Minnesota, and I've spent 21 years doing product development in medical devices and pharmaceutical support manufacturing equipment. I'm running because Corcoran's a beautiful place with rich natural history, with great agricultural roots that need to be preserved. And I'm running to protect them both for future generations. I work to prioritize zoning and development changes to ensure that those resources are preserved for the long term and to maximize green space preservation whenever development happens. I look forward to discussing the issues of the day with the candidates up on the table with me, and I will pass the mic.
Alan Schultz.
My name is Alan Schultz. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, Patty for moderating, and Hope Community Church for sponsoring this event. I am running for re-election to council. This would be my 2nd term. A little bit about my background. I'm married, a father of 2, raised our children in Corcoran. We've been here for just over 10 years. Work experience, I've worked for the same organization for 26 years. I'm a manager for North American Accounting for a financial services company in the insurance industry. Like I mentioned before, this would be my 2nd term, so I've been on council for 4 years, and before that, the Planning Commission for just over 4 years. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Jason Woody.
My name is Jason Woody. I just want to start off like the other candidates and thank everybody for showing up, everybody who's viewing via Zoom, and the League of Women Voters. It's a really good service you guys put on here for no money, but satisfaction of helping the community. My name is Jason. I've been a Corcoran resident for 38 years, graduated from Buffalo. I have no wife, no kids. I don't own a Fortune 500 company or have a bunch of bachelor degrees, but I swing a hammer well. I'm a small town contractor. I have 20 years experience in the business, much of it in the commercial construction aspect of things, being the right-hand man for the job soup, running multi-million-dollar projects from anywhere from total apartment renovations to ground-up buildings from scratch. I want to run for council because I want to preserve what makes Corcoran Corcoran, and if we don't develop in the proper ways, I feel we might lose what makes us Corcoran, and that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now start the questions, and you'll be answering in rotating order. You will have 1 minute. The first question, we'll start with candidate Woody. What do you think is the #1 issue facing the residents of Corcoran, and how would you address it?
Well, from what I've been hearing via around town and on social media, construction and development is a huge, huge issue. There's many different opinions on both sides of the table. I would like to kind of try to bring people together and unify the thoughts and the feelings of people in Corcoran about our future. I'm not against subdividing, but I'm kind of against subdivisions. I don't think a farmer should be in his or her tractor until they're a skeleton before they can sell their land, but also putting up these huge subdivisions, creating the vinyl jungle really detracts from Corcoran and kind of puts heartburn in the citizens who have seen their small town rural city grow into something that they're not really interested in. I would just try to prevent it from becoming Maple Grove so we can still keep Corcoran that little gemstone that everybody wants to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz, and by the way, candidates, you can ask me to repeat the question if you'd like me to. Candidate Schultz?
Thank you. As Woody pointed out, growth has been a major factor in the city over the last few years, and it'll continue to be a growth as more and more developers, organizations are looking to develop within our city. We're seeing widespread interest in this community, and we've done a lot of extensive research in revamping our northeast guidelines. In doing that, we've also put heavy emphasis on our own water supply, freeing ourselves from Maple Grove and what they've done to restrict our community in that regard. But growth, what I would love to see more growth of is in commercial, providing opportunities for jobs and services within our community. Commercial growth will change our tax base. Right now, 84% of our residents, our tax dollars are coming 84% from the residents of this community, and we need to spread that over to commercial.
Thank you. Candidate Espelin.
For me, it's all about purposeful growth, being mindful about what we put where, and preparing to both maintain our small town and rural feel while building out a mindful commercial backbone supported by smart residential growth.
Thank you. Candidate Nichols.
There are several specific things that I would do and have advocated doing over the past 2 years to deal with the same challenges that my other contemporaries have mentioned. First, I believe we need to expand protections for adjacent landowners when development is happening to ensure that we maintain a buffered green space so that local residents aren't impacted strongly by new developments coming in next to them. I also believe we should require open space as a condition of granting PUDs for low-density residential developments to ensure that we can retain natural character and open space and natural resources where they currently exist and create them where they do not. I think we should restructure the PUD system to require 4 votes to approve to ensure that the city has a stronger hand in negotiations. I believe we should limit conversion of single-family homes into corporate rentals when that comes before us, or if it ever comes before us. I would also encourage us as a city to ensure that we have an adequate park plan and are funding it completely to ensure that inflation doesn't prevent us from building the kinds of parks and trails that we desire.
Thank you. For our next question, we're going to start with candidate Nichols. In view of all the ongoing development in Corcoran, what skills and specific experiences do you bring that will guide development decisions in Corcoran?
I will refer to my past answer because all of those are things that I've been proposing for the previous 2 years. Many of them are on the cusp of being implemented towards the end of this year. My project management expertise has taught me to balance the interests of all stakeholders. That would include existing residents, new residents, developers, and those selling their land. We need to ensure that we maintain a long-term view of the city and ensure that we don't allow short-term considerations to prevent us from making the best decisions, even if it's hard to say no sometimes.
Thank you. Candidate Espelin.
I guess for me, it's really about planning and project management skills that I've done for multiple years on multiple sizes of projects, including civic projects, balancing the revenue of the tax base with the expense and cost of running a city, and really agreeing with candidate Nichols, the long-term view of what do we want our community to be.
Thank you. Candidate Woody.
To touch base on the previous two candidates, I do agree with what they say. I have been in charge of, like I say, multi-million-dollar projects, whether it's affordable housing, student housing, overseeing a lot more of the administrative end of things, working with HUD, working with HomePath, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, like that. And I've seen how development can really impact a city, not just in Corcoran or the rural parts, but Minneapolis, Bloomington, Edina, et cetera. I think proper planning, proper communication, open lines of communication with the city, and allowing the residents ease of access to information, to the answers they deserve. And I think the future of Corcoran needs to be planned out and needs to be a more of a co-op.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz.
Would you mind repeating the question one
No
more time?
problem. In view of all the ongoing development in Corcoran, what skills and specific experiences do you bring that will guide development decisions in Corcoran?
When I think about my experience, I would look back at the 4+ years I spent on Planning Commission, reviewing plans and making recommendations to council. Also the last 4 years on council, reviewing different developments coming in. But the management skills I learned in the workforce really taught me to view things with an open ear. Sometimes we go into meetings with one mindset, and the facts of the situation will change your mind or change different aspects about it. But I really enjoy working with staff and the other members of council that come to a consensus and to come to a good understanding of how we want development to look. I also have been very forthright in pushing back on developers on certain aspects and holding their feet to the fire. If they're not following our development contracts or following through on promises that they make, I want to make sure we're using a big stick and keep them in line. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with candidate Schultz. How can Corcoran work with Hennepin County to address increased traffic on highways such as 101, 116, and 19, as well as local roads when highways are backed up?
Well, working with the county is probably like working with a wall in many cases, but we try our best, and we get in front of the county, and our engineers are talking with them every day, trying to get them to buy in and spend more dollars in our community. They seem to want to spend all their money on light rail and everything downtown, but they don't want to spend money out in the western suburbs. So we've spoken to our county commissioner, and we're trying to push the point that we have more roads in Corcoran that need attention than they have miles of light rail. And why aren't they spending more dollars in our community like they should be? We shouldn't have to deal with the traffic that's coming from Wright County and up 94. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Woody.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. How can Corcoran work with Hennepin County to address increased traffic on highways such as 101, 116, and 19, as well as local roads when highways are backed up?
Well, as candidate Schultz stated, working with the county is obviously like watching paint dry. I think that we really need to put the pressure and hold Hennepin County responsible. Just because we're on the western edge of Hennepin County doesn't mean we need to get neglected. There are many people out here that have been waiting 20, 30, 40 years for more infrastructure, road improvements, paving roads, easier access around town. The traffic is a huge, huge issue. And it seems that we could be kind of landlocked in some of the areas on 101 and even on 19 and even 116 for that. So I would just like to delineate it to people that have more knowledge and experience and the higher ups of government that to work with us and the county to come to a conclusion that we can all agree upon.
Thank you. Candidate Nichols.
If you look back at the most recent city council meeting, we actually had an opportunity to interrogate / investigate the issues with our county commissioner, Kevin Anderson, who has tried to be supportive of Corcoran's needs through trying to ensure that they consider additional factors like the proximity of new development as they're making investments into roads and other infrastructure items. So we are trying to make some progress here, but there is limited things we can do directly. There are a couple things that we can try to influence. As development occurs, we can try to push for stoplights to be installed to ensure that there are brakes in traffic, to ensure people trying to get out of their driveways have the ability to do so. We can also, where appropriate, look toward a long-term future where we take over some of those road segments to ensure that we have direct control and can add lanes or other controls as appropriate.
Thank you. Candidate Espelin.
I think candidate Nichols made some very good points about getting to know the people, understanding what they're being held accountable for, also adding our own strategic plan with a prioritized list of what we want, and then executing that plan with goals and objectives and accountabilities. Because with something like Hennepin County, like working with a big company, there has to be accountabilities. They have to know what they're signing up for, and they need to commit to the execution.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with candidate Espelin. Let's talk about water sewer costs. Corcoran is installing a city water and sewer utilities for homeowners. Residents have expressed concern about costs of these city services. How would you, as a council member, address these concerns? Candidate Espelin.
I think the first step is to understand what is a standard cost, so a baseline for everybody to compare to, and whether that's big cities, small cities, surrounding cities, understanding what are the cost drivers that make things go above the baseline, and things that we can do as a city and residents can do to reduce the overall costs to building that infrastructure. We're going to need it eventually, so it's going to have to happen. It's understanding why it costs what it does, understanding what we can do to reduce the cost, and then plan for that over the long term.
Thank you. Candidate Nichols.
There are really two elements to infrastructure costs. The first is on the construction side, where we're currently looking at building water infrastructure for the northeastern district of the city. That will enable us to have independence and the ability to set our own prices for residents based upon actual costs. But that will only benefit residents in the northeastern part of the city. The remainder of the city that currently has sewer and water service will continue to receive it from Maple Grove. And the challenge that we as a city have in developing using someone else's resources is that we lack the ability to price those resources. We're really at the mercy of those pre-existing contracts. So in order to ensure that we can control that long term, ultimately the system needs to expand to the point where it can serve the entirety of the sewered and watered portions of the city, the MUSA region. We're currently on track to accomplish that in about 10 years based upon current planning estimates. That would be entirely funded through trunk line access charges that are paid by developers as land develops. So the capital side of that system should not require.
Thank you. Candidate Woody.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Corcoran is installing city water and sewer utilities for homeowners. Residents have expressed concern about costs of these city services. How would you, as a city council member, address these concerns?
Well, I would start off by doing more research and really getting down to see how we can cut costs and how we can address the citizens' issues. We do need city and water sewer. Progression is coming, progress is coming. You can't stop it, but you can shape it and control it in the way you want. So we are going to need it for the future, and it may seem like right now to the citizens of Corcoran that it's too much or it's not needed, but we're going to have to try to come together as a community and realize that it is needed for the future, and it's only going to cost more then than now. I would also urge people to get up to the podium and start speaking in the mic. One or two people can't really do it, but 500, 600, 1,000 people, that's a really powerful voice that everybody in this city has. So please express it to help us figure this situation out.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz.
First thing I'd like to point out is we don't have sewer facilities in the city, and we're not planning on developing our own sewer treatment plant. That comes through Met Council. Met Council treats all the water in the metro area. As far as water and sewer installation, those charges are borne by the developers that are putting those into the city. The city does not put those structures in. And as Jeremy pointed out, they're being charged trunk charges and hookup charges, and that's what's paying for those things. What we're doing for development of water is right now we currently buy all our water from Maple Grove. Maple Grove limits the amount of growth we can have in residential, and they do not sell us any water for commercial. So if we want to develop any land in commercial and diversify our tax base, we have to do our own. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz, you'll be first for the next question. What steps would you propose the city take to save our trees in the city park and other city property from emerald ash borer and other tree diseases?
Well, I wish I was an arborist, because they could come save the trees on my property as well. And that's probably who I would end up referring this to, the professionals that work in horticulture and can speak to that. But trees are a very important part of our landscape, and we have tried and tried again to get developers to save as many trees in their developments as they can. It seems that developers don't really care what's on the land, but what the land is worth to them. So we've tried to use a carrot approach rather than a stick, because the fear is if we institute a tree preservation plan with a stick policy, those trees will be gone as soon as the policy comes through. But as far as emerald ash borer and other diseases, what we try to do with our planning is use diverse tree mixes so that one disease or one type of insect does not wipe out our future trees.
Thank you. Candidate Woody.
Well, as far as like emerald ash borer and Dutch elm disease, I would definitely rely a lot on and communicate a lot with the University of Minnesota. I did used to be an arborist or a dendrochronologist for the city of Crystal, Columbia Heights, and Robbinsdale. So I have a rather diverse background in that particular subject. I would just say we have to work with the community to let them know the disastrous effects of emerald ash borer, Dutch elm disease, oak wilt, you name it. And I would stay in touch with the DNR and the University of Minnesota and communicate with them with an open line of communication as to problems we're having or we're seeing and how we can prevent it. A lot of it is preventable, and it's just being proactive and, no pun intended, cutting it off at the source.
Thank you. What steps would you propose the city take to save our trees in the city park and other city property from emerald ash borer and other tree diseases? Candidate Espelin.
I actually see a two-prong approach here, because we've got the developments and the trees that are chosen to be put in there, which I think there's a lot of issues with what trees are chosen and how they're installed and the substrate they're installed in, and matching those together. With the older growth trees, making sure that we've got a regular plan for review with the U of M, which I think is a great idea, the Arboretum or other folks like the DNR and making sure that we are planning to replace trees as we know they're starting to die off. So it's a new and old and a constant review and replacement approach.
Thank you. Candidate Nichols.
The specifics of the question relate to city property specifically. So this is city stewardship of trees on its own land. And the city does have the ability to take some direct action there. You can do soil drenching treatments with insecticides as a preventative to eliminate the risk of emerald ash borer for a season. That's actually something I'll bring up to the Director of Public Works. That's an excellent suggestion from whoever posed that question to the candidates here today. More broadly, I agree with the other candidates. Trees are a vitally important part of the natural character that we're trying to protect in Corcoran, both existing trees and those that we would be installing as development happens. I see a role for the city in communicating treatment options and ways to deal with those diseases and pests that will continue to emerge as species mix across the planet.
Thank you. The next question, I'm going to ask the timers to do 90 seconds for. And we're going to start with candidate Nichols. Timers, are you ready? Okay, thanks. What do you see as the greatest challenge to starting or growing a business in Corcoran, and what, if anything, should city government do to support businesses? Candidate Nichols, we'll start with you.
In 2020, we had a business community forum for candidates running for council at that time. And the persistent message from the businesses who are currently working in Corcoran is that it's very challenging to work through the development model and ensure that all of the requirements for updated codes and building construction are complied with. So in response to that feedback, I have always tried to be as flexible as possible with existing businesses who are trying to expand their footprint in the city. So when we have existing businesses that have been staples in our community and support community events for long periods of time, we should be as flexible with those folks as we can, because it's easier to maintain and expand existing businesses than to try to entice new ones to locate in the city. For those that are not currently in the city, they're currently being drawn through the drastic increases in residential population. And most of the new businesses that we're seeing express interest in Corcoran have less challenge, I would say, meeting those higher expectations than those who have established a footprint in the city and have been with us for a long period of time and may be burdened by things like lots that were plotted before we had current setback requirements or where building materials requirements were looser. So I'm fine with having a new set of requirements for newer businesses, but trying to ensure that we don't drive existing businesses out of the city.
Thank you. Candidate Espelin.
I agree with candidate Nichols that the existing businesses need to be put into almost caretaker status to make sure that we are supporting their needs for growth and our desire for them to grow. And then the new businesses needs to be mindful, once again, kind of like residential. What types of business do we want? Where do we want them? And should be a plan in place that says these are the types of business, these are the locations. Whose responsibility is it to go out and find them, or at least identify the ones that we would want to see in there and start building the plan out to get there. In order to keep them moving is now how do we help them fit into the population, whether it's residential, whether it's drawing from outside our borders, because a good business climate isn't just for our own town, it's for the surrounding areas as we bring more people in for the anchor events or gravity events that we can provide to make this a thriving community. So it's all about balance and mindfulness, and I think that's probably the most important piece.
Thank you. What do you see as the greatest challenge to starting or growing a business in Corcoran, and what, if anything, should city government do to support businesses? Candidate Schultz.
A few years back, we had a workshop where we brought in commercial developers and asked questions to that effect. What can we do to bring in more businesses to the city of Corcoran? And at the time, the big thing was rooftops. We just didn't have rooftops. Now we're getting a lot of rooftops, and we're seeing a lot more attraction. But the biggest thing that I hear from businesses and businesses are looking here is our ordinances. A lot of our current ordinances are very restrictive, right down to what type of grass they can put, how many trees they can put on their property, or they need to put on their property, even if it doesn't make sense. So I think we need to be flexible as a council and consider the situations and work the best that we can to make things fit in a responsible manner. It's not a square peg round hole situation. We have to work with businesses to keep them here and to keep them growing. I think we've done a large part for growth to attract businesses with the development of St. Therese. That's going to be the cornerstone of our downtown area, and it's going to bring in a lot of commercial growth in that area. Similar with water and the Brockton Interchange, we're going to see a lot more growth up here in the Northeast for commercial businesses, and I look forward to the opportunities they bring to the citizens of this town. The services and shopping that'll be available in the future will be a nice change.
Thank you. Candidate Woody.
I do agree with what every candidate up here said. We didn't have a lot of commercial businesses in the downtown, quote unquote, downtown sector because there were not many rooftops and there wasn't really a market for it. So now that there's a lot more rooftops and a lot more traffic, there's a lot more eyes out here, and it's really sparking the interest of a lot of developers from the commercial aspect. I think it'd be great for the city. It's going to bring in a lot of revenue and create more jobs. But I do hear a lot of small businesses in town saying they feel like the city is against them and not with them. Like Mr. Nichols and Schultz stated, they are kind of squawking about the ordinances and how tight they are and what you can and can't do. And also with dealing with like grandfather statuses, it would really put the hurt on some of the small town businesses if they lose their grandfather status. I think we just have to have more civility when it comes to, and compassion when it comes to what we can and can't push and how we can and can't fudge things and how we can and can't make things work to keep our small businesses here that have been here for 20, 30 years and still accommodate the larger ones, and everybody can grow together and...
Thank you.
Perfect.
Timers, we'll go back to 1 minute. And the first question is going to go to candidate Woody. How do you see the city collaborating with other entities like the county, schools, and other communities to better address issues such as transportation, fire services, or shared amenities?
Well, I believe transportation, when it comes to schools, it'd be up to the school and the school board. I think that's more of a school district problem than a Corcoran or a city problem. We don't have buses and light rail in here yet. So I would have to say that we have to do some more research on it and see what the problems are, ask more questions, put boots on the ground, and get input from people, because not everybody up here has all the answers. And I really think coming together as a group and going to the think tank and how we can address these issues and kind of put pressure on the county to not forget about us and not let us get kicked on the wayside. We need transportation, we need infrastructure, and we need to work with schools.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz.
So I think we do a pretty good job with regards to fire services. We've got, I'm thinking about it, 3 different fire departments in our town, Loretto, Hanover, and Rogers. And so there's a lot of coordination around fire services. We also had a long-time fire study, even looking at the growth of our city and the potential impact of having our own fire service or a first responder services. Most of our calls are medical. So the council is spending a lot of time on that. We're really digging into that. We want to make sure that we're collaborating with our fire chiefs and that we have good fire services for the years to come, and we're addressing the needs of our growth in our city, especially when it comes to medical response times. With schools, having 5 different school districts in this town makes it a challenge, but we're always working with them and getting information to them as far as the growth in our town so they can plan for growth
Thank
of their
you.
districts. Thank you.
Candidate Nichols, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
How do you see the city collaborating with other entities like the county, schools, and other communities to better address issues such as transportation, fire services, or shared amenities?
One area I want to be sure to touch on is the burgeoning relationship the city has with the Three Rivers Park District. For those who might not have been exposed to those folks, they are responsible for a massive trail network that extends throughout suburban Hennepin County. And they're actually working with the city currently to develop what's called the Diamond Lake Regional Trail that will run from Wayzata up through Corcoran to Crowhassan Park Reserve. And many of those developments that we're currently working through will be included in that trail system because of work we've done to partner with Three Rivers. And I'm very excited to see that kind of a network build out north to south. There'll be a separate trail system that's being planned probably in the next year or two through the master planning process with the Park District. That'll go east to west across the midpoint of the city as well. So there's great opportunity there for us to build amenity in the city without the city having to pay for the construction of that trail system.
Thank you. Candidate Espelin.
The dilemma you pose reminds me of the early days of Minnesota and the Twin Cities, where Stillwater chose the prison, Minneapolis chose the University of Minnesota, and St. Paul chose the Capitol. There seems to be some sort of shared service model with, we live up in the Northeast and we've got Dayton, Rogers, Corcoran, and Maple Grove, and we kind of chuckle as what if everybody puts a gas station on the same corner. So there's a lot of these things that can be shared between communities where one company or one community hosts it, the others take advantage of it, and there's, again, a planning opportunity to say who's going to do what and where. And that's a little bit more difficult, but then you lay the county over the top of it, and perhaps there's ways we can get the county to absorb some of these things that maybe we don't have the expertise for, but again, it has to be a mindful and planful growth.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with candidate Espelin. What are your thoughts on the Corcoran Police Department, or the police department in Corcoran?
Well, I'll share with the group what I told Matt Gottschalk the other day, is that it's time for the Corcoran Police Department to move past the education phase with certain things that are going on and start holding folks accountable. I think we've got a lot of great officers. I've met most of them, and some of my neighbors kind of wonder when the police show up at my house all the time to chat about things going on in the city. I think that there's probably not a lot to do in Corcoran because we don't have a huge crime wave going on here. So what else can the police be doing from a community service perspective? Again, it's where do we need them? How do we cover all the area? And how do we build trust between officers and the community and have them enforce the rules and regulations?
Thank you. Candidate Nichols.
We're fortunate to live in the safest city in Minnesota, in large part because of the excellence of the Corcoran Police Department. We have a very strong rapport and relationship between the officers and the residents of the community because we've been very careful to ensure that we are extremely selective in the hiring process and we train and equip the officers very well. I feel like it's one of the strongest assets we have, is the strength of that bond of trust between the officers and the community and the officers. And I would prioritize maintaining that if reelected.
Thank you. Candidate Woody, what are your thoughts on the police department in Corcoran?
Well, I think they do a great job at keeping us safe. I think majority of why we have no crime is the type of citizens and the residents we have here. And it's, like I said, I've been out here for 38 years and I haven't locked my door once. So hopefully now I won't get robbed. But there is no crime out here, and it's a lot in part with a quality police department, but just the quality of the citizens and the life that everybody here wants to live. As far as the police department, I mean, we got really good officers. I think we could probably curtail a few things, and with the budget, I think we should spend the money instead of updating $1 million to the police department, I think we could have allocated resources to the community center that would better help the community.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz.
I think saying we have no crime is a misconception. There was a car stolen from right in front of the mayor's house this last summer. And we're getting overflow crimes that are flowing through. People are stealing. Carjacking is out even beyond us in Buffalo and racing down 55. But we have a great department. I'll always support the police in the community. I actually have a nephew and a niece that are law enforcement officers in other communities, so I have a strong bond to law enforcement. I think our officers do a good job balancing between education and enforcement. There's a fine line, and each officer is empowered to make those decisions as appropriate when they come in contact with the public. So I think they're doing a great job. They have been understaffed for years, and we're going to continue to support them and make sure that they're right-sized to protect this community and its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question, we're going to start with candidate Nichols, and I'm trying to decide if this is a 90-second question. Yeah, I think this is a 90-second question. Ready? What are your thoughts about affordable housing in Corcoran? Candidate Nichols.
Corcoran is the philosophy that we have for development in Corcoran is relatively hands-off, and that's by design. We want to ensure that the growth that happens in the city is market-driven. The challenge that we have is that that tends to create housing that is not low cost. That's also based upon zoning and where the phasing happens in development. So most of the land that's developed in Corcoran to this point for residential growth has been low-density residential, which means it will mostly translate into single-family homes. Later, as we get farther into the 2020s, there will be land that will unlock for development that is zoned for medium and high density, which is typically where we would have a greater fit for a affordable home designation. By that time, the city will also have grown large enough that we may have additional services. I know for the sake of affordable housing, typically it's very beneficial if you have mass transit availability and things that are provided by the county and other service providers that just don't make sense for Corcoran the way that it is. I would continue to stay on the market-driven path for now, and as we continue to unlock additional parcels, as we progress through the comprehensive planning period, we will naturally see a healthy amount of affordable housing develop organically.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz.
Well, we haven't seen any developers come in with really plans for affordable housing. And I think the last time it was prior to me being on council, and it wasn't well received as it was a subsidized piece of development. But I would like to see, as we receive more jobs downtown, that we see more of a mix of housing units in that area, especially for we can have a place for workers to be in close proximity to those jobs. It tends to be right now that our most affordable housing is within our mobile home park, and those people need homes, and they're good people in those homes. So I would love to see more affordable housing, but as Jeremy pointed out, it's market driven at this point. The city has not been in a situation where we've attracted different housing units.
Thank you. Candidate Woody, what are your thoughts about affordable housing in Corcoran?
I think it's inevitable with growth and development, especially when you keep adding more and more of a populace, then you have to have more and more lower income housing. It does kind of have a stigma that, oh, they're just bad people and they're, bums and they're criminals and this and that. Well, that's true to anybody in every walk of life. I wouldn't be against it as long as it's done in an appropriate manner, and the type of low income that we have hopefully it would mesh with our community we have right now, and our mobile home park is low income, and there's some very, very, very good people in there. And as long as we keep people with the same kind of good morals and good character and good moral fiber that may just be down on their luck or had a tough break, I'm not against that whatsoever. Just as long as everything is planned out and thought out and everybody benefits and wins.
Thank you. Candidate Espelin.
Being an economist by education, I'm a big fan of organic growth and market-driven growth. That being said, as the city grows and we get to this higher density housing that I know is on the plan, and there's a balance of more jobs coming in, we are going to have a need for more affordable housing, and that means collaborating with the county to understand the services and make sure our transportation can help move those folks to the jobs. I'd like to see the city put something out there, put a stake in the ground for 10 years out, and then manage the market growth towards that, waiting for some of these businesses to develop, understanding what type of jobs there are, and then looking to where have we planned to put housing that might be more affordable outside of the existing trailer park.
Thank you. This is going to be our final question, and we'll go back to the 1 minute timing. We're going to begin with candidate Woody. The city has hired a city planner. Why do we continue to use outside contracted services?
Well, that's a good question. I can't really give you an educated answer to that because I don't know enough about it. Just based on looking on the outside in, it seems like it's not necessary, but at the same time, city planners have a lot on their plate, and it's nice to delineate it to other people in government, higher up, or what have you, that we can collaborate and come to a conclusion and come to agreements as to how we want our city to progress. I don't think one individual can handle that whole burden. So I think just keeping in contact and, again, doing more research and staying in touch with larger forms of government, I think we could really justify having a third party that we use and having a city planner.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz.
We have Landform as our contract planner. Landform has done some people may say, difficult job over the years working with businesses and whatnot in the community. But the beautiful thing about Landform is they bring a diverse experience background to us. They work in all sorts of cities throughout the state. So the things that we're experiencing here for the first time, they've worked with other cities before. So they have a history of dealing with these situations. They also have knowledge and experience going back in the city. You can ask the planners and they'll tell you exactly what happened on this day back in this year and who was on the council and who did what and why it worked. Also workload, as Woody pointed out, there is so much growth and development going on in the city and so many applications coming through that one city planner cannot keep up with the workload, so we're able to diversify and spread some of that work out. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Espelin, the city has hired a city planner. Why do we continue to use outside contracted services?
Well, being a small town or a smaller town is like being a small business. You don't need full-time employees in every position. Using a fractional person in a planning role, I don't see any problem with that. I do see a little bit of a problem of using a firm versus potentially a solopreneur where you're paying an extra premium for that background. I do like some of the commentary about the history, but I want to make sure that we're getting value for that. I firmly believe that as we grow, we might need a full-time planner. But right now, having a fractional, I'm a fractional person myself, so I think there's a lot of merit to saying where can we put fractional folks when we aren't big enough yet to maybe have a full-time employee. The key then is having a robust strategic plan that gets developed so that any planner we might hire on a project basis can help execute and plan against something that's already been laid in. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nichols.
The reason why Corcoran now has a city planner is because that was a high priority for the council that was elected in 2020. So we began a principled approach to all major city services to ensure that key decisions are made internally by a permanent person whose interests are aligned with the city and with the city residents, as we've achieved by having our current planner, Natalie Davis. We also have to contract out a little bit of that work, depending upon volume, to landform, as Councilor Schultz mentioned a moment ago. I foresee a model where we continue to use contractors, but a rotating stable of contractors, where we put these kinds of major functions where we need support periodically to deal with surges out for bid on a regular basis, to ensure that we're getting optimum service and optimum pricing for all the functions where we don't want to carry a peak capacity function on taxpayer dollars. We can do that more effectively with this kind of a rotation through other high quality providers.
Thank you. I will now call on you for your closing statements. And we are going to start with candidate Nichols. You have 2 minutes.
My 2 years on city council have been tremendously rewarding, and it's been great to see an increase in resident involvement and to see decisions start to be shaped in the interest of existing residents and new residents who are coming into the city. If re-elected, I would look forward to seeing more structural changes to improve resident experiences. I would like to emphasize and continue to emphasize structural changes in how we handle and process development decision-making to ensure that the council has a stronger hand in negotiations and therefore has more control over the creation and preservation of green space, and to ensure that residents have excellent experiences with parks and trails once they're part of the city. I would also encourage and continue to encourage the development of efficient service provision by the city staff. We've made major investments due to the influence of councilors such as myself and Mayor McKee in adopting efficiency software and ensuring that we have appropriate machines and equipment so that as the city grows, we don't need to continue to grow city staff at a commensurate rate. Where we can start to see gains in efficiency, we'll start to see gains in cost, and we'll start to see taxes begin to go down as well. It's been an honor and a privilege to be your counselor for the past 2 years, and I truly hope for the chance to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from candidate Espelin.
Thank you. Our city is emerging, and as an emerging city, our needs are going to change and fairly rapidly. I think that there is a huge opportunity for us to be, as a city, very resident-focused and very business-focused. Right now, I fear that we're very developer-focused, and through my dealings with the city, that's kind of what I've gotten, is that there's not a clear pathway to how the residents win in the developer world. I also think there has to be more accountability with these developers, focused on what are we asking them to commit to? What are we thinking that they should be doing to make this better? And it should be a way to maximize how the residents experience that construction or that building. And I can tell you today that that's not been a concern of the city. And I'm not saying it should have been in the past. Some of these are really complex things. But what I think I bring to bear is complex problem solving. It's what I've done for 30 years in every sort of environment. And finally, I think that the understanding of generating revenue and the understanding of matching that to expense, and how do we manage a budget that's going to get continually larger along with an expense line that's going to get continually larger, so that we make good decisions to properly generate revenue, but also aggressively manage the expense line. And finally, I'll go back to the thoughtful development with an eye towards resident experience, because you want people to move into the community and build a sense of community together. And what should the city be doing to make sure that those residents can come together in smaller groups, larger groups, broader groups across what is a fairly geographically large city with population pockets? Thank you for the time, and I look forward to the election in November.
Thank you. Candidate Woody.
Development is a huge, huge issue here, and growth and expansion is a huge issue. And if I were on city council, I would try to, again, create even more open lines of communication with the citizens and residents and let them know exactly what's going on and what the city's plans are. I've been hearing a lot of people in town just they don't always trust the city. They think the city is kind of not being very forthcoming with some things, and then subsequently projects get done, agendas get passed, and then the citizens feel like they weren't given a fair shake at it, they weren't given enough information at it. I think we need to think very, very seriously and work very closely with the community and decide how are we going to develop Corcoran where we don't push off development, we don't go into the Stone Age, but yet we don't turn into New York City. We cannot push or stop development out of here. We can't keep it from coming in. All we can do is manage and control how that progression forms, how it transpires, and how we shape Corcoran's future. I would just support small businesses. I would kind of limit some wasteful spending. And I think I can offer a fresh perspective on the ways we can develop and shape Corcoran for its future that would appeal to a broad spectrum of citizens. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. Thank you for the League of Women Voters, and I look forward to the polls this year.
Thank you. Candidate Schultz.
First off, I'd like to thank the community for the opportunity to serve you on the City Council for the last 4 years. It's been an honor and a privilege. I've always viewed myself as a public servant and not a politician. What I look at for the city is working for the whole city, not one individual or one developer or one mindset. I have no single issue of interest. I look at all aspects and everything that comes before council with open eyes, and I've always been available for contact. Probably one of the first council members to have my personal phone number on the city webpage, and I have taken phone calls from the deer stand on opening of deer season. So I am available anytime you want to contact me, and you can reach me on the phone number listed on the webpage, or my personal email address is alanschultz870@gmail.com. If you ever have any questions, I would love to hear from you. Again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this on, and thank you for all of you attending and all of you listening in the audience. And I look forward to the election come November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the Corcoran City Council Candidate Forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I thank the candidates for being part of the democratic process by running for office and for being willing to serve your community. Audience, please join me in thanking the candidates with our applause. Thank you also to the League of Women Voters volunteers, our audience here, and those viewing this event virtually for your participation in this candidate forum. Thank you to the Corcoran City staff and to Hope Community Church for supporting this event, including live streaming and recording tonight's forum. On-demand viewing can be accessed at wlvwpa.org. For additional election information, we encourage you to visit vote411.org, the League of Women Voters award-winning one-stop shop where voters can register to vote, find their polling place, and learn how candidates stand on issues. Please remember to vote in the November 8 election by absentee ballot or in person. And just a note, absentee and early voting starts this Friday, September 23rd. Remember, your vote is your voice. League of Women Voters welcomes new members, both men and women, at lwvwpa.org. Thank you and good night.